High Velocity Wrestling is a professional wrestling promotion based in Western North Carolina. HVW's events provide a family atmosphere featuring old school pro wrestling with a modern day flair, giving a little something for everyone. Hey, what is up? Welcome to the HVW Podcast, the official podcast for High Velocity Wrestling. I am your host, Tom Clark, and we're here to give you the latest news and rumors surrounding the best pro wrestling promotion in the Carolinas, as well as exclusive interviews that you will only find here. Please remember to visit us online at highvelocitywrestling.com and follow us on all of our social media, including Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The links are available in the episode's description. This is episode number 12, and yes, folks, we're back once again, still dealing with the situation going on in the world around us right now, still doing the best we can with it all. We're all buckling down, hunkering down, as they say, and trying to get through it. But I'm excited for this episode because this time it's a bit different because we're not interviewing an in-ring competitor, which, again, will be a little bit different, a little bit different flavor to the show this time, but it'll be fun, trust me. As I said, he's not an in-ring competitor, but we actually have the man that for years served as HVW's ring announcer, and he's back in his old spot since the relaunch. We're thrilled to have him in that spot, and we're very happy to have him on the show today. Folks, this is the Dream Maker, Terry Hudson. Terry, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Tom. I'm doing great. And hello to everybody, all the HVW fans.
Yes, sir.
I wish I got to see a little bit more than I do, especially at this time right now.
Yes, sir, absolutely. That's a good segue because ever since this thing started, man, I kick off the show with the same question to everybody, and that is, since the COVID-19 pandemic began, what have you been doing? I don't want to say to entertain yourself, but to keep yourself busy. What is it? How are you dealing with all this? In other words, how are you getting through all this?
Well, it's been a little bit different for me because part of what I do, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but part of what I do has made me essential, and so I've still been out in the public quite a bit. So I haven't been quarantined heavily, but I have talked to many people that are quarantined, and it's amazing to hear their stories. You know, they've just been sitting at home for a long time. It's something they're not used to.
Right.
Which I work from home, so you know I've done that for a while, so I'm pretty used to it.
In my civilian job, I am considered an essential worker. So I'm grateful for that. However, I have seen the seedy underbelly of American society, my friend. I have seen people push themselves past each other. I've seen people be rude. I've seen people be polite as well and be understanding. So I've seen kind of both sides of the coin. But it's a crazy time out there. And I've said this before on other episodes too, is that pro wrestling is such an escape. And it's such a way to, especially if you're passionate about it, man, to not only go to live events, but to watch it on TV. But everything about the experience has changed now. When there's no fans in the crowd, you can't go anymore. We can't run shows anymore. It's like a whole different animal. It's like something I've never seen before. It's crazy.
Well, you know, one thing it's done for me, and I have been doing this for a while, even before that, is when I was in wrestling, I didn't know a lot about it until I found such an appreciation for it that when I got out of wrestling and I got into other things, I actually went back and I watched old videos, everything from Gorgeous George and Luthez back in that day up to the Crockett and AWA eras with everybody from, you know, Ric Flair and Steamboat to Blackjack Mulligan and the Briscoes and Harley Race. And I became a huge fan of that type of thing and watched how they really told stories. And you got to think, you used to be able to pay $5 a ticket to go see all those people all on one program. It was an amazing time to grow up in. Right. And at least I was able to do that back then.
And $5 at that time is $50 today, maybe more?
Maybe, but it didn't seem like it.
Yeah, right, yeah. I mean, I love the whole storytelling aspect of this. That's what we do from start to finish. And you look back, I love that you mentioned Gorgeous George. You talk about nuclear heat.
Yes.
All he had to do was do the thing with the hair and flip his hair back, and there's one spot where he's running the ropes, right, and the other guy's waiting for a clothesline, but instead of he just throws his arms up in the air and says, "No, I'm not going to do that." Man, you can hear that crowd
just over the edge.
lose their mind. Yes, so good. So good. I mean, that you know, not to go off the deep end right off the bat here, but you know, I feel like in recent years in this business, storytelling has been lost in favor of flip, flop, and fly. Unfortunately,
that's a big deal with me. I agree with you.
I'm an old school guy too, man, and I suspect you are as well. And I want the match. I want the storytelling to play out in the ring, not necessarily suicide dives every 2 seconds, man. That kind of thing drives me nuts.
Well, I think that there's a place for that on the show. And just because, you know, I'm primarily a music promoter,
right,
and I'm involved in the music industry. So in that, you try to find a variety for the show. And I think in wrestling, it's the same concept. You have those, but you have to have the other two. And I feel you have to have big guys. I do feel smaller guys add to the program. I know there have been some people that don't think that, but I do. And that's why we had, you know, worked on the division for that with HVW when I got started. But the other thing about it, you have to have some real, just old school fighting, not just where sometimes it's just funny things for the audience. That's one thing I saw with the older guys. They looked like real heat in that ring. Mm-hmm. And those guys, you know, a lot of them were almost bar fighters that would travel together and ride in the same Volkswagen or, you know, SUV or whatever they had back then, probably station wagons. And I've been able to talk to, you know, a few of the old school ones. Like I'm friends with Tully Blanchard, and he's told me a few stories. And then I used to know Ivan Koloff, and I'd hear some stories from him.
Right.
And they were just great things to hear. Is just that there would be some heat in the locker room, and there would be some things that really happened in the ring. But regardless of it all, there was a heavy impact when they got in there. You wanted to see them really go at each other. I'd love to see a Roddy Piper these days. I would love to see an Anderson brother or Harley Race. And you know, of course, you have J.D. Drake, and he's a good comparison to some of those guys back then. So I've always been a fan of his since the first day I met him. Absolutely,
and honestly, I think the fans want that. I don't know of an era when the fans didn't want it, and you know, the lines get blurred for the big companies. The big company, of course.
Yeah.
The lines get blurred because, you know, those guys will say things like, well, the fans don't want what they call a rest hold. They don't want to see guys laying on the mat. And I'm like, you say that, but you're not giving them a chance. Like, you know, I firmly believe you can condition an audience to want one thing or another. So when all you give them is slap in the face, you know, like we said, suicide dive every 2 seconds, super kicks where no one gets pinned ever, Canadian Destroyer pile drivers where no one gets pinned ever, then obviously you're conditioning your audience to want that. But if you would slow down and take the time to tell a story, you could condition them to want that as well. So
you could.
That's the problem.
And that is the deal. You, from music fans to wrestling fans to public speaking fans to honestly even church people, the person on the stage, on the platform, has conditioned the audience to act like they do.
Right.
You've taught habits. You even do it on social media. You actually train your algorithm. If you're an actress who wants to be considered a serious actress or a serious singer, and all you post is bikini pictures, you actually get a lot of followers. But what happens is you condition the algorithm to only send you the people that want bikinis.
Right.
And in the same way, you know, it happens in wrestling. You're not conditioning them for the audience that you want. You're conditioning them, you know, just like you said, just to want those things. And I don't think the audience always wants to lead. I think they're waiting for you to lead them. And that's why they pay you the prices that they could spend on movies or they could spend going to a restaurant. Instead, they're honoring you to come pay that. Give them something they're not expecting.
I love that you said that because Gary Bidfield, of course, HVW owner promoter, Gary and I have said
this. I'm
a
fan of.
Yes, sir. Same here. Gary and I have said at length that, you know, in terms of what fans are looking for, what fans want to see, I mean, I'm sitting there in the crowd, and when I see the bad guy, all right, here's the heel, it's obvious who he is, then I want to sit back and say, make me hate you. Make me, you know, if I'm laughing, if he's the funny kind of bad guy, then he's not a heel. I'm sorry, it's not the same thing. I mean, I should want to kill that guy for sure. And talk about what the fans want. I think they're hungry for it. I remember Ric Flair telling a story when he and Wahoo were feuding during the plane crash. And so Flair's in the hospital. They had rushed him there. Word gets out quick. Well, it got back to the arena that Flair's in a plane crash. Wahoo goes to the hospital to check on his friend, okay? Mm-hmm. They held him back. The doctors and nurses called the cops. They thought Wahoo was there to finish the job. And I'm like, that's the best story ever. Because people believed it so much. And I'm like, I don't know if I don't think we can ever get back to that. Because, the cat's out of the bag, that kind of thing. But that's no reason why you shouldn't try. So when you have, a company, whether it's big or small, thumbing their nose at you and winking at the camera every 2 seconds, I'm like, give me the remote. I'm changing it. I'm certainly not going to buy a ticket to watch it.
Yeah, and even when I've known some of the guys, I know that there was real heat in certain situations, so I didn't know what to expect. I remember when I first moved to Charlotte, I was probably here 2 years, and Tully Blanchard invited me to go to this restaurant that his daughter, Tessa, now she's a wrestler, mm-hmm. but she was working at this restaurant. His daughters were working there, so he wanted me to come eat there. I go in, and this is when I was married, so I had my wife with me. And we go to sit down with Tully, and I'll see Magnum TA come in. Oh. And I'm telling her, look, I don't know what's going to go on, but I don't think this is good. Yeah. And it turned out they were friends. But, I had seen that stuff so much that I thought there's something about to go down in the Genghis Grill. But it turned out everything was fine.
That's awesome.
But that shows how you can get into that and believe it if it's done well.
Oh, absolutely. And their I Quit match in the steel cage, don't even get me started. We'll be here for another hour talking just about that. That's, as a kid, I guess I should have been shocked at the amount of blood, but I wasn't because I was so absorbed into it. It felt like he's legitimately trying to kill him. That's what I thought. It's crazy. So, like I said, I'm glad to have you on the show. Now we can start the show. All right. So I'm glad to have you on the show, obviously. And I obviously we want to talk about HVW. Let's go back for a second. I want to go back to January 25th, Resurrected. That's our big comeback event. I swear to God, it seems like 100 years ago now. For the longest time, it felt like it was just last week. And now it feels like it was 100 years ago to me amidst all the stuff that's been happening in the world around us. Tell me your opinions of that night. Tell me your impressions. What did you think when you walked in and how the show progressed? What was your takeaway from the thing to begin with?
I had quite a few takeaways, but I'll tell you, when I first walked in, I was amazed with the new equipment.
Yeah. And
what they had set up. It was very high tech and it was really cool. I like that the sponsors had come on board because that was part that I played in, when I was there before. But what really surprised me is for a company that hadn't been out there in a long while, and as the time got closer for the show, there was actually a packed crowd. And I didn't expect that at all. I really realistically expected about 10 people to show up.
Wow.
And that, hey, this is a new thing coming back in. Let's see how it'll work. But evidently word got out and people loved it. And the show delivered. I could definitely say that. And I love the commentary. That was a new thing for me. I'd seen it a little bit here and there before, but it looked like it was a consistent thing all the way through the show. Mm-hmm. It was also great to see Gary again because I hadn't seen him. Viper. I always called everybody by their ring names. I never used their real names. So when people say Gary, that's not something I've ever called him. I've always called him Viper. And then it was great to see Crucifix, who used to be one of my team members, and we had good history together. And I've always been proud of him and how he brands himself. And of course to see JD because I hadn't seen him in forever, and he's one of my favorite big guys.
Right.
And those guys, they killed it on the show at the end.
Oh my God! Yeah.
You could hear those chops probably in the parking lot.
I've watched that.
Him and PJ Boss.
I don't know how many times I've watched that match. And what's funny is I had my kid backstage after the show, and Drake's trying to get himself situated, and I said, "Look, I don't want to bother you. My kid would love to get a picture with you if you get a chance." So finally, I bugged him enough to where he did it. And I told my son, I said, look, Drake said he'll take a pic with you, but only if he gets to chop you first and you got to lift your shirt up. And my kid says, no. And Drake's like, he's just kidding. So we took a picture with him and Drake gave the obligatory fist, hey, all right. And as soon as I snapped the picture, bam, he popped him real good on the chest. didn't kill him, but I'm like, I told him, I said that was the best thing. I wish I got that on camera. That'd have been awesome to see. But
yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's a throwback, man. I love the old school stuff, and I was very happy with how everything came together. We had a few technical difficulties that night, but honestly, no one in that crowd cared. And
they don't.
No, they don't.
And you guys didn't let it overwhelm you either.
No.
Which I've seen that in a lot of different shows, music, wrestling, whatever, where they get so focused on that they forget the fans are there. But you guys just did it as if the fans are the most important thing. The television equipment, all that secondary.
Right. I remember Gary kept getting in my ear saying, "Brother, we got to go. We got to go. We got to go." And I said, "Just go, man. Let's just roll. Go with it." So finally we went, and it was the very last second, and it came off great. The show is beautiful on video. The cameras were top notch. I mean, it doesn't look like any other pro wrestling presentation I've seen with the camera angles and the way the camera's moving around the ring, and everything's so fluid, and the lighting was perfect, and I couldn't be upset with any of it. I thought everything came off really well, and that show was 3 months in the making. And I know that Gary was very happy to have you on board. I couldn't wait to meet you. He told me a lot about you. But for fans listening to this show right now, who maybe are fans today of today's HVW, maybe are not familiar with you back in the day, take a minute and fill us in. First of all, go back. Did you grow up as a wrestling fan? Is that why you got into all this to begin with?
I did when I was a teenager. You know, I was a young kid and a teenager. I watched all the Mid-Atlantic stuff, and my dad was a TV evangelist. Not a TV evangelist, a traveling evangelist. Mm-hmm. So he would travel around, and when he was near the D.C. area, I would see some of the WWE stuff, and when he went more out west, you know, I would get to see some of the things like the Von Erichs in Texas, or what was it, the one in Memphis, I can't remember their name, but I used to love to go watch anything near that area in Tennessee because they were all different, yet they switched some of the wrestlers. And I had all the Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the wrestler magazines and things like that. And I looked at that as one day. I did pretty decent as an amateur wrestler. So I thought that one day I wanted to do that. And when I was wanting to do it, everybody was a normal size, you know, Ric Flair, etc. Right. By the time I got old enough to do it, everybody was like Hulk Hogan and Sid Vicious. Right. So, you know, it's like, just forget that and find something else to do. And that's pretty much how. So I never thought about it again, never kept up with it. But how I got into it was my dad was a pastor of a church, and there was a kid there at the church that wanted to be in wrestling. And I had seen a sign for this, you know, House of Pain Wrestling School. Mm-hmm. So I took him over there, and I didn't know how all that stuff worked. I didn't know there was a wrestling school and people got involved and all that. So I talked to Gary, Viper, mm-hmm. and he said, well, you know, why don't you train with this kid? And so I came there with him and, you know, kind of became his throw around guy, you know, right. And then I would go to the shows to watch him and support him. And I would always be wearing a suit. And then one day Viper said, look, man, everybody's asking who the suit guy is. Why don't you come up with a character and just be part of the show?
Right.
So you were talking about being a ring announcer, but I was only a ring announcer here and there. What I actually was a manager and a wrestling character that would get in the ring sometimes for street fights and things like that on the shows. And how it worked was the first time we came up with this group called Tyranny, and it was a bunch of the young guys that dressed more in dark, you know, clothing, mm-hmm. and they were kind of the dregs of humanity back then, you know, right. the young Turks. And so we were supposed to come out and just ambush the show. And we couldn't think of a name or anything. And right before we came to the door, one of the guys said, let's just call ourselves Tyranny. And we came out, did our thing. We ended up hurting Gary, and he allowed us, you know, he told me that there were some things coming up that we could do whatever we want. So we really hurt him. And so with that, the audience was able to physically see how we hurt him. And that opened the door for people to be really interested in it. And a lot of those guys, you know, they've gone on to do other things with HVW throughout those years. And then from there, it just became, I was the mouthpiece for different groups, such as we had the Dream Team, which Drake was on that. And then we had Anger Management, which was Crucifix was in that with me, mm-hmm. Along with a guy named oh, my mind's going blank right now, and he would kill me just for that. Oh, Exodus.
There you
And
go.
then probably the biggest at the time was EOD, which was me, Viper, and we had some members that changed in that, and then of course the con came through, and we had our feud with them, and that resulted in some of our bigger shows that we did. And so I was just I was a mouthpiece character that wore suits, and I had all these sunglasses that matched my suits. It was a thing for back then. I would have evolved it different now with the things that I know, but back then it worked really well, and it was able to help us fill seats. So
I was manager for EOD, and this is like I want to say the original version. I'll say it was a few years in when I came along.
Oh yeah. That's how I heard about you, was him telling me all that stuff.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, and I'll ask you this, but I'll preface it with this: I'm a bit of a sarcastic person. I don't curse on the show, so I'm trying to keep it clean. But I've been called much worse, right? But the sarcasm tends to run pretty thick with me, right? So on show days, it was so much worse. It was so much worse. Like it was the minute I woke up. Now, that Sunday, I was fine. I was back to usual Tom, or whatever that means. But, like, someone told me, it was on a Saturday, hours before the show, it's like, dude, you get like this every Saturday. And I'm like, what? And it's like, you're a jerk, man. Like, every Saturday. What's up with this? And I'm like, oh, my God, I'm in character right now. It's like 1 o'clock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was 6, 7 hours from the show, and I was all ready. So did you find yourself doing that? Did you have to go to a place, or did you just turn the volume up, or what did you do? Mentally, could you see yourself becoming someone else?
I think I did that right before the show. It was all new to me. I acted before, and so I knew how to develop a character and things like that. But I had this fun in the beginning, really taunting the people there.
Right.
Because, I grew up in the country too. My family's from Lynchburg, Virginia. But when I put on that suit and I put on those glasses and act like, my character was supposed to be this hotshot agent, because we chose that because I had a music business, agent background. But I would call them hillbilly mountain maggots, and I would, say things to them like, hey, lady, I don't come down to Waffle House and tell you how to pour coffee and call people sweetie. You don't come here and tell me how to do my job. And it would infuriate them. And so, with that was fun for me. The first night it happened, they came to me and told me that I had some death threats from the audience, so they need to keep me in the building for a good 45 minutes.
Awesome.
And I thought, you know what, maybe this is working. But that, because of the mountain region, the people didn't know I had such a love for them at the time. It was a way to play that character and, get them, just over the edge. And so with that, that's more what I would think of. How can I amuse myself by making fun of them and yet have them want to be made fun of?
Right.
And that's the way it worked. People loved when I picked them out of the audience to say something about them. And that I saw that's how they interacted with the show. So that could be my contribution to make them, glad that they spent that money. And so with that, instead of more angry, I got more like, how am I going to pull them in?
Right.
What can I come up with today?
Because everybody wants to be part of the show. Everybody
And they
does.
do. It's about them. That's it. The audience, you got to remember that. It's not about you standing up there on a stage or in a ring or whatever. It's how can you make them feel like they are part of the show and they are glad they came.
Absolutely.
And if you can master that, you will sell tickets.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. And it's funny, not to jump too far ahead, but, think about fans today. The past several years, we've seen like hashtag, hijack Raw, hijack Smack. I'm like, it's so funny how we went from being those fans to being now that we're so hard to please that we are willing to, oh, that's supposed to be a good guy. All right, let's boo him. Oh, he's supposed to be a bad guy. Let's cheer him. And it's like, I don't know whose fault that is. Is that company for not giving fans what they want? Or is that the fans saying, hey, let's just go wreak havoc? And I'm thinking, dude, you paid a lot of money for that ticket. Not for nothing. You paid a lot of money for that ticket to be in that crowd. You paid money for that ticket to go and not have a good time? Like, this is your idea of a good time, to hate everything that you see? To me, that's not my idea of fun. So I don't know how we lost that, and I don't know if it's been lost. But somehow we have changed as fans, and our crowds have changed too, honestly. But it's such a compare and contrast between now and then, I think.
Well, here's the deal with it all, I feel, is when I was in the music industry before I ever came to Hendersonville, and we had the number one songs and everything was going really great. And the way the world worked was you got an artist, you signed them with a record company, had a booking agent, and you were out there building your framework, and you were almost dictating what they liked. Record companies had consultants, radio stations had consultants. You were being basically spoon-fed everything that you should believe. Mm-hmm. Same thing with wrestling. You had the companies that were telling you, what you liked and telling you who should be the good guy and the bad guy and who should be the champion and all these kind of things. And you just paid a ticket and you sat there, and I don't think you were very well respected all the time. Or you bought the CD or whatever. Then the internet came in, and as it evolved, it gave the audience more of a voice.
Right.
And it gave you actual metrics, that you could look at and say, this is what they like, this is what they don't like. So in that, all of a sudden, music fans could find people that weren't signed with a record label. They could find people that they wanted. With wrestling, they could find these people that they weren't seeing on TV, or they could voice their opinion that sometimes the company should be listening to. They don't have to listen to the trolls because, right. Between the workers and the fans, there are many trolls and people that just talk to be talking and just, trying to get attention. But there are real things that you can listen to, and you can chew up the meat and spit out the bone and say, hey, maybe they want this. Let's give them some version of this. And at the same time, like the early entrepreneurs, let's don't just give them only what they want, but let's give them what they want and what they don't even know that they want.
Right.
And let's step that up. And it could really work. And I say that with the wrestlers now, brand yourself. You got more opportunity right now than you have ever had as any kind of musician, as any kind of wrestler, to go out there and build your own brand and get attention and not have to depend on somebody major to do that for you. And then you become more valuable to them. You have built a framework, you've built a fan base, and you become valuable to the show.
That's true. That's a great point. I mean, it's and we've talked a lot, and I've for several episodes now talked to different wrestlers in the company, and had that very conversation. Jake Jacobs, I was talking to him about that too, about, you are your brand, you are your business, and you have to go out there and sell yourself. And, right. The company will do it for you to a certain degree, but if the more you do, and he's so dialed in, it's crazy. He completely understands how this works. And he's a great
performer too.
Oh, absolutely. Very good in the ring. And he flat out told me, he said, man, he said, the more successful I am at building myself and selling myself, the better I'm going to be. I'm going to be more of an asset for HVW. And I'm like, God, this guy totally gets it. You know what I mean? Like, it's so hard to find talents. That's the irony of what you just said, dude, is because you're right. There's never been a better time. You've got all these tools at your disposal to get yourself over, as they say, and to sell yourself to the audience. There's so many guys who were so lazy. Not going to name names. I'm not even saying they're in our company, but I've seen so many guys who are so lazy, and I'm thinking, it's a 2-minute promo. It's a 30-second. Just turn your phone on and do the thing. And I'm thinking it's not that hard. And it makes me want to reach through the phone and slap somebody. And I don't,
because it's not anybody else's fault that they haven't made it.
Right.
They can look in the mirror at the person whose fault it is.
Right. And, it's an odd time to bring the guy's name up, but Zack Ryder. For years, they didn't care about Zack. He was just another dude. He goes on YouTube and makes himself YouTube famous. And fans are like, oh my God, this guy's awesome. His gimmick is so stupid that it's funny, and we're going to totally support him. So they started chanting his name at the live events. And they're finally like, well, pal, let's put him on TV. And then they don't give him anything, and they take over his YouTube show, and they run it in the ground, and they, go with God. He's still there. God bless him, right? But I don't know how he's still there, but to me, he stands out as the example of somebody that's like, fine, you're not going to do it for me, I'll do it for myself. Becky Lynch is another example. Somebody that said, fine, you're not going to do it for me, I'll do it myself. And there's examples of that all over the business. And, to me, that's a direct statement back to that company that, hey, maybe you should have took 10 minutes out of your day to talk to this talent to see if maybe you could come up with something. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. And those self-starters, I mean, I can't say enough good about the Blanchards, for instance. And Tessa and her, I love her mother, Courtney, to death. And I'll get to run into her at grocery stores sometimes. And she's always a good supporter on my Facebook page, always saying encouraging things. But Tessa, I did Tessa's very first television interview for somebody. And she was really nervous. She hadn't gotten through wrestling school yet. She was telling me how she got involved, but when we were in the green room talking. And I could tell there was a determination, that she didn't make it on her dad's name.
Right.
I mean, this person went out there. She got serious in the gym. She trained hard with George. She was on every wrestling show she could be. She would have done whatever they asked. She would probably be that person. If they need the ring built, she'd have built it by herself. She was that person. And she got on social media and she worked it really hard. And you see what's happened for her. And excellence did rise to the top, right. And I still don't think she's at the end of her journey. I think she's still really just beginning. She's going to get noticed more and more. And that's what these guys need to see is be that person that becomes the best they can be, builds the best brand. They need to know their brand colors. They need to know their catchphrases. They need to have everything look uniform on their social media. And if they did those kind of things and got out there and created some noise, did something that I'll tell you this. I teach the music students that I teach in the industry a thing called bump ups. It's a name that I made up, but I hopefully will think of a better name someday. It's just all I have right now.
Right.
But you'll have somebody trying to build their career. So they'll start off on one plateau and you'll have a bump up that gets them to the next plateau and a bump up that gets them to the next. And it's been various things for me with different artists. Sometimes they'll have a video that goes viral or they'll get attention on the news or something will happen where their song wins some unexpected award or it gets picked for a television commercial or a TV show, whatever. That would be a bump up. There could be a thing with, these independent wrestlers. They're following their path and they're really letting people know the story of who they are as people, not just their own wrestling stuff, but, kind of make your story interesting on your social media about what's going on in your life. And then something really interesting could happen in your life that gets a lot of attention and does go viral. And viral is not something that's created. You have a lot of these big companies that have a budget to make something go viral. That doesn't count as viral. Viral is when something interesting happens and everybody sees it and organically they get on board.
Right.
And they take you somewhere that you could have never gotten the money immediately to get to. And they can do it really fast. And then after that bump up, what are you doing next?
Because it's all about next. It's all about the next opportunity.
Right.
Imagine if we had these tools back during the first run of HVW.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because we had some good things back then. Of course, there were things even with me. I had been out of the music business a little bit, and I was looking to get back in. I was working for a church, and I was still able to do some things like help them get sponsorships with car dealerships and, things of that nature, and it helped for some cool shows. And I was one of the people that helped them create what we called the Brawl in the Mall, where we talked the mall into letting us set up a wrestling ring. And then we got hooked up with monster truck rallies, things of that nature that made it fun. But that was all great. They were by themselves. But if I'd have had really a good tie on something like Facebook instead of MySpace, and then had Instagram and YouTube and everything going how they go now, even TikTok, as crazy as that has risen, if you'd have had those things at those events and you got the fans involved with their phones to show this stuff, could have been way bigger than just the region it was in.
Right. And that's something that we talked about for the first two shows that we've run so far. We wanted to have opportunities for the fans to take their phones out. We were going to incorporate it and have you talk to them directly and say, hey, folks, take your phones out right now and go to Facebook or whatever, go to Twitter. And then you get to the show and you got all these notes, you got all the stuff that you got to get to. And it's like, oh my God, we totally didn't do this. So it's something we're definitely going to have to get on the next time we run, which hopefully is very, very soon. So, all right, so we're going back to, like I said, the first run of HVW. How many years total did you spend with the company at that time? Like, were you full?
I think it was 2, and then I took time off, and then I came back, and had a different type of run the second time, which I thought was more interesting than even some of the things in the first. But I'd say 3, maybe 3.5 years total.
Wow. And had fun, I'm sure. Had a blast.
Oh man, the characters you meet in that play. When I first got involved, I would meet some of these new wrestlers, and it was they were from so many different backgrounds and their personalities and all. And you would have these guest promoters that came in, and they were over the top crazy, and they had all their opinions, and it was always about what wasn't being done right instead of, hey, why don't you help these guys and show them what's being done right. And then the real manipulation that came on, and I had this one guy that you guys have talked about way too many times for me to give him any airtime or credibility.
I know you're talking about.
Trying to make everything about him, and I was trying to help Gary with this other show and another organization where I wanted to do this rival thing, and it would have been huge. And instead, this guy got in Gary's ear and acted like it was a takeover of the town, and they went on the internet blasting me. And at first I was like, how can these guys do this when, they've always known that I'm in their corner. And they would send me horrible text messages back and forth. It was crazy funny. But my wife then got offended, and, she was really good with the legal world, and she was going to handle it. And I was like, no, this is the kind of heat that helps everything. It's not something you take, to the federal court or whatever.
Right.
And so it was pretty funny. But I also, the fans, they're as bright of characters in that audience as there are in the ring. And you get to know them. There's one guy, Barrett Seals, still stands out in my mind this day because he would always bring me brass knuckles to use on somebody. Or, he even called me when one of the rival managers had captured Viper's son and was holding him in a cave. He would call and tell me where the cave was and that he heard police helicopter. So it was great. It was great times.
Gary's told me about a lot of those old school fans for sure. And we've got a great collection now. We've got that. They call themselves the HVW Front Row.
Oh, yeah. I love those guys.
Those guys are crazy, man. Yeah. They had T-shirts made with their logo on it. It says, "We are Front Row." I'm like, yeah, T-shirts made. That's more than some of the talent has done for themselves. I'm like, that's the greatest thing ever. So, yeah, man. Talent, the fans are pumped up for this. I think that was obvious at Resurrected. And I know I'm jumping around a bit, but I went from Resurrected.
I have ADD. I'll stay with you.
Good, awesome. So I went from Resurrected to First Strike in February 29th. So back during your first run, and I know things look different. The ring looked different. The logo was different. And, when we came back, Gary's like, we're going to do this for real. And he got the business incorporated. It's legal with the state of North Carolina. Got all the paperwork. He pays taxes on sales tax. He's got everything. Everything's on the up and up. Everything's on the books as it should be with any legitimate business, right? But he's like, I want to do this for real this time. And he's like, I want to revamp the whole thing. I want a new logo. I want new colors. I want new everything. New stage, new set, new appearance of the ring and all that stuff. So as you're walking into January and then later February, thinking back about what was it, a big culture shock to you to walk back into the company? You're like, okay, it looks the same, but it doesn't look the same. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've liked both looks of it. I never was against the old look. I thought they had a great look too. What I thought was really cool about the new one is that it was set up like an actual show.
Yeah.
The equipment was there. There was a great entrance ramp. And, you had the concessions set up pretty well. There was a good building for it, at least the ones I've been in. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing with it, I thought the guys spent more time on their gear now.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought they were more branded with that. So you could tell I'm a brand fan.
Yeah.
But I think it was that show that one of the best surprises for me is one of my favorite guys, and I didn't know how to interact with him my first run at HVW because, I came from a different background. I came from as far as me, I believe you should hold your own, and I didn't know how to I didn't know how to back down when I was supposed to and play a character, and it would cause a couple run-ins with me and this guy backstage. But after I watched everything and I had left there and I came back, I found out he was right. This is really how the business works. And it gave me such a healthy respect for him that when I saw him, I was like, that guy's for real. And that's Ken Magnum.
You're right.
And I'm a huge Ken Magnum fan. And I think his part of the show just elevates things because he has that old school thing that I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
That, boisterous voice. And I can tell you, Ken will knock your head off. He's the real deal. And so to see him in that ring and to see him talking like he's talking, I thought that added new life. But the twist I saw from the villain or heel Ken Magnum that I used to know was the way he talked about the fans. And I thought, with what you and I talked about, it's about the fan. Mm-hmm. He made that real.
Right.
And so he got them involved, telling them how important they were and how valuable it was that they came to the show and they bought their ticket. And so he was there for them. I loved it.
Absolutely. And he, and I know that you know this, we have made him the new chief operating officer of HVW. Yes. We needed for lack of a better term, we needed a cop. There's been some shenanigans at our first two shows, and Gary is. And he, oh my God, definitely. He's like a state trooper, man.
Yeah.
But like Gary he can only be in one place at one time. I'm at the commentary table, and I wear a lot of hats for this company, but security and cop is not one of them. So we needed somebody that could hold his own, defend himself, defend the guys, defend the women, protect the company, protect the roster, look out for Gary's.
It gets out of hand.
Absolutely.
Without that guy.
Absolutely. Look out for Gary's best interests. I mean, this guy's the real deal. And, he's I think he slid right into the job, and he immediately started making announcements. And, it's a shame we can't run right now. I'm anxious to see how he does physically in the job. I know he's going to do great. So
he is. One other thing about that show is that I had, right before I left, I became a fan of this character named Six.
Yes.
But I'd never gotten to see him perform other than videos, and I'd never gotten to meet him. And so it was great to see him on that show that night. I was finally, I get to be on a show with Six.
Yeah, he's a different kind of cat, man. We got a video actually on Christmas Eve. And it was sent, and I still don't know how the guy got our phone number, right, or got my phone number, but he sends
because does he live in a cave?
I know, right? Yeah, that's right, yeah. So he sends it to me, sends it to Gary, he sends it to me. The video came to me at 6 o'clock, at 6, and then it came again at 6:36, and then at 7:06. And then when I didn't answer, because I thought I'm like, who's sending me this? I don't even know what it is. Then it became like 8:06, 8:16, 8:26, 8:36. It was 6 on every hour, every half, every quarter hour. And I was like, all right, enough. I'll put the thing on Facebook, whatever. And I told Gary, he's like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm putting the video up, whatever. And it's obvious the guy was like January 25th, whoever this man or woman was. And Gary had a pretty good idea who it was. I had no clue. And then lo and behold, it's 6. And man, talk about making a statement at Resurrected when he dropped TJ and got Boss up off the mat like 8 feet in the air, whatever it was.
Who else could lift him?
I still don't think TJ's come down from that. And insane. I thought they busted the ring when he landed. But yeah, he's, like I say, he's a different kind of cat. Powerful, strong.
And huge. That's a big guy.
Oh my God, man. And I got to talk about Boss for a second, because Boss faced 6 at first strike. And Boss is the heavy. Boss is the guy that you're just not supposed to like. And by the end of that match, they're cheering him and they love him. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what just happened, but I don't know if it's out of respect or what it's out of. But man, he is a physically impressive guy. Just to stand next to him makes me feel like not such a big dude anymore. So crazy. Yeah. All right, so rewind for a second again. Were you with HVW up until the end when Gary stopped, or had you left before that time?
I think I had left before then because I was really trying to move to Charlotte, and I had we finally got the opportunity, so I moved here, and I think I might have been gone half a year before they shut down. I could be wrong. It could be longer than that, but I think it was about that long.
How did you hear about it? Did he contact you, or did you just read about it? Or
I always have tried to keep contact with him. He's somebody I really like, and um, he knew something about me at the time that a lot of people didn't know. I had developed, after I got out of the music industry, I had developed an anxiety where the things like I couldn't even drive a car, and so I overcame that. And coming back to Charlotte, you see how many things have happened. It's just been an incredible life, moving back here. But it was because I overcame that anxiety, and a lot of people didn't know I had it. I hit it fairly decent, but it came out at times, and he was a good support system during that time, and so that's why I've always kept in contact with him and just trying to find out what he's doing. That's how I found out he was putting this back together, was always calling him and checking on him.
Right. What did you think when he told you about it? Did you have an opinion on either way, or were you like, good for you, or be careful, or what were you thinking about it?
I had always thought if something is in your blood, like it's in his blood, that you got to find a way to stay connected to it. Mm-hmm. I think that's true in anybody. You don't always have the same role. With me in music, I started off as one of those hair band singers back years ago, weighed 119 pounds and had on zebra pants, and all that stuff. But there came a time that I didn't want to do that, but it was still in my blood. So I wanted to get associated with the business side. And the same thing with Gary, it was, if you're not going to be in the ring, find some way to be with one of these companies. You have a lot of knowledge. You know how things should be set up, because he played some roles with other companies, like he's done some WWE shows and things like that. Right. And he would find out what they were doing, he'd bring it back, and he'd try to take what he learned and add it to the show. And when you have the knowledge that he's had over the years, any of those guys that have been in it that long, I feel they should find some way to stay associated with it and help the next generation so they can do it right with all these opportunities they have.
Absolutely. You got to pay it forward, right?
Yeah. And I think he's done that. I think when he told me he wanted to really do this and do it right, it's like, that might be the answer for him.
Oh, for sure. So if you've been gone for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, then you're 8 years maybe removed from HVW at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do all this in 2 seconds. Tell me what you did in 8 years. I'm just kidding. What did you do in that time span? What did you do in that time span? What did you get into after that?
I came back to Charlotte, and I still did some music stuff from home, and then I got involved in television and became a television producer, and actually an executive television producer, which I didn't even know what that was at the time. Mm-hmm. In their days, I still don't really know what it was, but I did it. And we had shows that were seen in, I think, 154 countries. So I learned a lot about television, and it was pretty fascinating. The 3-camera shoots and how they shot live events. And we got to do some cool things. One of the things I did was doing the floor managing and set up for there was all these media things in one day where we had Dale Earnhardt Jr., and he was about to do the Daytona 500, and we did the Sports South, Sports Center segments with him, and a lot of the other NBC shows and things like that, all in one day. So I learned how those were done. Got involved, of course, in the live music scene. Got involved with training singers, and then I got involved with entrepreneurs, and I'm even involved in office products. Now.
Oh, wow.
I've learned so much since that time, but I've also this past year, I got back involved in the music industry. I took public speaking classes so I could be a speaker and a coach and learn online coaching. And that led to me being able to do some cool things. I've made a lot of podcast appearances, some TV appearances. I help coordinate 3 television things today for the different affiliates here for a nonprofit that I work with, that we give conversion vans to families that have a handicapped child. Mm-hmm. And we were able to give 2 of those away today.
Awesome.
And then sporting events like we've talked about that at HVW. This past year, I did the opening prayer for the Carolina Panthers versus the Tennessee Titans, where they have me on the field and they have me pray over the game before the game begins. So I love working with the NFL, so that's always cool. And it's opening up more and more opportunities. Here's something that's really cool that's coming up in August is I'm going to be emceeing, and I have this group, we call them And Friends, where we do these And Friends concerts for charity. And so in August, I'm going to be emceeing and doing one song as an opener for this guy who's the lead singer of the rock band Boston. And
nice.
We're doing that for charity.
Yeah.
And then also MC the Italian Festival in Charlotte in the uptown area. And so you'll see me at quite a few things, when you come to the Charlotte area, which I always love to have any friends coming to Charlotte because I know the city pretty well now.
Mm-hmm.
When it opens back up, there's a ton to do.
Because I'm glad you said that because I heard it's like, I don't know if it still is now, probably not, but I heard that during the peak of this thing, it was like a ghost town in the middle of Charlotte, where usually it's jam packed with traffic, you can't get through.
It's still that way in a lot of areas.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
You should bring your crew up because something that I always show people that are wrestling fans that come through is when I'm driving, there's a place called South Boulevard, and right off South Boulevard is this Red Cross building. But back in the day, it was the Crockett Building.
Oh.
And it's where the Four Horsemen jumped Dusty Rhodes in the parking lot.
Shut up.
You remember seeing that?
Oh, my God, of
right
course.
There on South Boulevard. So
Make it good. Make it count. Make it
Yeah.
count. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's great. I mean, Dusty using John Wayne's line when they put his hand against the truck, he said, "Make it count."
Yeah.
Make it good. He did it. My God, that brings back so many memories, man. That's the fun days of the business right there for sure.
Yeah.
So I love that you're living in the heart of Crockett country. That's the coolest thing ever. And people hear the word Charlotte, North Carolina, who cares? But to me, Charlotte, North Carolina is Crockett country. It always will be.
They used to own the baseball team here.
Oh my God, yes, of course. Yeah.
That's how he started.
Crazy.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of the wrestlers. When I first moved to Charlotte and got involved, I would go to Gold's Gym. While I would be working out at Gold's Gym, Ric Flair owned it. So Ric Flair would be there with a spray bottle, and you'd be bench pressing, and you'd get off the bench, and he would spray and clean the bench for you to move it. Just great. I mean, he would interact with you, and he had all his titles up on the wall. But you'd be working out, and Arn Anderson would be beside you, and the guy that became Diesel, I think he was Oz back when I was going to the gym.
Kevin Nash.
Spray paint his hair. But all those guys were there, and you would see them all the time, and get to interact with them, and they were dedicated in the gym. I mean, they were there all the time because they knew that they had to take care of their bodies before they hit the road.
Absolutely.
They did 200 days a year back then that they were traveling and doing those shows.
Yeah, maybe more. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, obviously you keep yourself busy. You're always on the go. I mean, we've talked about branding a lot. You've obviously done a fantastic job with that personally. I'm wondering, how in the world do you have time for pro wrestling at this point? I mean, how? And I know HVW has a special place in your heart, I'm sure.
That's exactly it.
And is that what it is, like a nostalgia kind of thing for you, or is it?
No, what my calling is to teach other people their callings. And everybody calls me this name Dreammaker, but I actually came up with that name at HVW. And now it's used in music and coaching and all of that. And my followers are called Dream Chasers. And they're people that are not just, talking about their dream. They're doing things to live their dream. And they're doing it in so many different, capacities, whether they're ministries or speakers or performers or entrepreneurs. They're generally creatives. But I created that name at HVW, and it's the reason I'm able to do some things now and get some attention that I'm getting. But the other thing is, there are kids that come to those shows. And one thing that I believe in as Dreammaker is that a lot of these kids are being taught to be something they're not on social media. We're a hustler, we're an entrepreneur, and they worry so much about likes. And what happens when that goes away? And I've seen what happens. It's not good.
Yeah. And
so I want to be in front of as many kids as I can. I'm getting ready to do some high schools this coming year. I was supposed to be doing them right now, but what's going on with that. But and we were supposed to do an event called Dream Chasers at the Charlotte Coliseum for the Atlanta Hawks versus the Charlotte Hornets. And because of the pandemic, the NBA canceled the season. So we didn't get to do it. But what I want to do is be in front of kids, and I want to let them know that that dream that was placed in you, that dream can become reality. And it's a time thing. If you can get past these things, if you can look past them to see that you will grow up and you will do great things. It helps with bullying. It helps with school violence. It helps with dating situations. It helps a lot of self-esteem areas. And they come there looking at those guys in the ring, just like we did. They want to emulate them one day. They look to them as a hero. So it provides a good platform to be in front of those kids and be able to interact with them after the show and just talk and say, hey, there are great things in store for you, and you can do great things. Make one good decision, and then make another good decision, and then make another good decision. And here's how you do that. And by doing that, I believe over time, we'll be able to impact a lot of people.
Absolutely. That's a positive message, man. I think we need more of that out there today for sure. And role models are a big thing. I had Sadie Lee Moss on the podcast, and it's not lost on her at all. And I mentioned this to her, and she was right there with me, that every time she gets in the ring, there's a little girl in the crowd. And that little girl may not become a wrestler, but she might be strong enough or brave enough to say, you know what, I can do anything I want to do. This woman's in the ring, and she's getting her butt kicked right now, so I can do anything. So I think it's important that dude, my son's 11, and I'm encouraging him to not only go to college, but to graduate and to make something of yourself. And he's a car guy. He's already a car guy. He can tell me 10 car lengths away what the make and model is, and he's 11 years old. I don't know how he does it. And I asked him one day, I said, son, what do you think about, and he goes, well, he said, I like to work with cars. And I said, well, instead of working on cars, why don't you be the guy that designs the car? I'm trying to get him to see bigger picture. And not there's anything wrong with being a mechanic. There's no shame in that job at all. I just want him to see bigger picture. I want him to step outside of himself and say, I can do this, but I really want to get here. So like you said, one step leads to another step.
Well, one thing that I like to say is that, because I've heard it said in so many different forms, but I found it so true in my life, it takes just as much effort to live a big dream as it does a mediocre one.
Right.
So many people spend that effort only thinking they can do certain things when really they're capable of so much more. And you're going to have to go through hurt. I've been through a lot of hurt. I've been through a lot of tears and pain that got me to be able to do some of the things I'm doing now. That anxiety propelled me, but it crushed me at first. And you're going to have things in your life that crush you, but they make you better. And they get you to that place. It's not going to be a comfort zone thing. But if you can think bigger, you can put that effort in, you can do some really big things that you never would even think you were ever capable of.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. So as we said, folks, we've only got 2 shows in the can, First Strike and Resurrected. I had fun at both shows. I thought that I don't know how you feel personally, but I thought First Strike was better than Resurrected, and I didn't think that was possible. But it topped it. I thought the matches topped it. The production was still good. We didn't have as many technical difficulties this time, so that was nice. And
that gets easier and easier as you go.
Absolutely, yeah. And we finally had a system, and then bam, we get shut down. So. But I know that you
get shut down, but you have an opportunity to come back even bigger.
Absolutely, yeah.
Shut down is not forever.
Gary's so antsy; he's ready to go right now. And I've actually had to talk him off the ledge. When this thing, let me just tell you, when this thing started, it was. I was like, dude, we're probably going to have to cancel. I'm not canceling. I'm not going to tell you how he said it. And I said, Gary, dude, I said, this thing's getting real, man. People are truly getting sick. This is dangerous times. I'm not canceling. I said, all right. So we were going to move ahead with Overdrive. That was March 28th. It was supposed to be.
Love that poster.
I did. Yeah, it's right. It's very nice, right? And sure enough, the governor shut us down the same week. And I was like, not that I was relieved, but I was maybe a little relieved. I wanted the show to get to happen, but I'm like, I'm hearing too much bad stuff. And I actually, a girl I went to high school with passed away from this about a month ago. And terrible. I mean, such.
Yeah, that's horrible.
And
Very sad.
And she had no pre-existing conditions either. So, there's a lot of fluff. You got to be careful who you listen to and what you read and find the truth. But there's a lot of bad stuff. But a lot of people recovering. Thank goodness for that. So hopefully we're on the way back. I know that you know this. The titles are coming back. The HVW Championship's coming back.
They look great from what I've seen.
I know, right? The tag team titles are coming back. The first ever HVW Women's Championship. I personally can't wait for that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely a long time in the making.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I come up and worked for Gary a few times through the years, done some commentating and stuff like that. And I was up for the Laurinaitis show, for the Matt Hardy show, did the commentary on that. I wasn't there as much as you were, obviously full time and all that. But it really felt like, yeah, this was absolutely the right time. And Gary said this, the first phone, and I've told this story a bunch, but he would randomly message me over the years since HVW had closed down. And I knew, it was like, hey man, what are you doing? You got time to talk? And I knew what he was going to do. He was going to pitch the idea of HVW. And, you know, I'm an hour and a half away at best, and closer to 2 maybe. And so he would be pitching me this stuff, and I'm like, dude, I said, I love that you're thinking of me, and I appreciate it, and I'm humbled, but man, that's a long drive. And he wasn't ready yet anyway. He wasn't ready. And my wife would constantly go, is he serious this time? I'm like, I don't know. I think he's just got the itch. September 2019 comes. He contacts me. He said, you got time to talk? And she's like, he's going to do it again, isn't he? And I said, yeah, probably. And this time he was ready. He was dead ready. He was dead serious about it. And one of the first things out of his mouth was, we're going to have a women's division. It's going to be awesome. So, yeah, he was ready, man.
I'm in. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Long time coming. And why not? Why not do it now, right? Well, brother, we've kept you over an hour here, and I felt like we just grazed the tip of the iceberg here, but this has been a fun conversation, man. Hope you've enjoyed it so far. So.
Absolutely, and it's been great getting to know you. You know, we weren't at HVW at the same times, so, you know, it's great that we've been able to come together in this time, and even I keep my mouth closed on most of it, but even to interact with Ivan.
Right.
Bit.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Exactly. He's definitely a different sort. But
this guy, I swear. Dude takes over our social media. And I feel like CM Punk. Do I have your attention now? That's kind of what it felt like. And yeah, and you know what the funny part about that is, man? To this day, I don't know what he wants. I really don't. I wish there was a red herring. I wish there was something I could tell you. Oh, this is what I have no idea what the guy wants.
I know he doesn't like you.
No, my God, not at all. Yeah, it's not a title shot. It's not a promotion. It's not ownership of the company. It's not. He's not one time told me this is why I'm upset at you. He just calls me names all the time.
Right, but I can tell you, I've had a little interaction with him, but I know people, and one thing I know, he's not just crazy, because crazy people do some interaction like that where they're just, you can't figure out, because they have no real, what could be a motive. But somebody like that that's got a good brain like he seems to have, there's a motive. We just can't figure out what it is yet, so you will.
Yeah, it'll come to light at some point. Hopefully it'll all make sense at some point. That would be nice, to make some sense of all this.
Well, dude, you are great at this. This is definitely your calling, and I wish you the best, because I've been on quite a few podcasts, and I just love your flow.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. I've been doing my other show, Tom Clark's Main Event, shameless plug, for 7 years this year, and I've got to rub up against people over the years. I got to interview Randy Orton, Big Show, Greg Valentine, Rob Van Dam, so it's been cool.
Oh, yeah.
It's been nice, and honestly, if I didn't have the background in the business, I think it would have been a little tougher to talk to some of these people. But you know, when you get up close and personal with somebody, even stand next to them, the showbiz part of it wears off after a few minutes, and you're like, okay, he's here to do a job, but so am I. So let's just talk. You know, and that's what it becomes. So, well, man, I've got nothing but positive things to say about you. I think you're doing fantastic as well. I love your message. I love everything you bring to the table. I think you are an asset, not just for HVW, but for whatever business you're involved in. So we're very proud to have you back on board. Obviously, I know Gary's
I can't wait to get back in there.
Oh, so my God. We can't.
Posted.
Oh, absolutely. You'll be one of the first people we contact for sure. Well, listen, before we get out of here, I want you to plug any social media you have. If there's any upcoming things, hopefully that's going to happen soon. Go ahead and hit the fans with that.
Well, basically, officialdreammaker.com is my website. And then the Facebook page is Official Dreammaker as well. That's the page they can follow. But I have an email list, and I send out inspirational emails once a week. And then the second part of that email goes out as kind of an instruction thing, whatever you're in, whether you're an entrepreneur, a speaker, you like things that are involved in church or ministry, or you're a performer, then I'll send out an email, kind of a how-to on things with that. And it's easy to do. All they have to do is contact me through either one of the Facebook or the officialdreammaker.com. Let me know their email, and I'll get them on it. And I also list through that the events that I'm doing. Like we talked about the event with the lead singer of Boston, Tommy DiCarlo, and then the Italian festival and all that stuff that hopefully will keep the dates that they have set right now. So.
Sweet. Sounds
And
good.
here's one other thing.
Yes, sir.
In October, I do this thing every year as part of this nonprofit I told you about, where I do a Christian talent search. It's called the Exalt Inspirational Vocal Talent Competition, and it's put on by ATP. I train the top 10 finalists, and I'm also one of the judges, and I bring in a guest judge. I got one from Nashville this year, and then, of course, the 4 judges we have are successful in their own right in music, and so it's a great thing to come watch. And the competition there is great. And if there are performers or singers in your area or the areas of your podcast, just have them hit me up and I'll tell them how they can get information to enter that.
That sounds awesome, man. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Terry, again, I do appreciate you doing the show with us today. And, dude, all the best to you. Can't wait to see you again. We'll be in touch real soon.
Absolutely, man.
Cool, man. I
Much
appreciate
love.
it. Yes, sir. You too. All right, Bye. Folks, that's going to do it for us here today. Thanks again to Terry Hudson for giving us the time. Fans, as you well know, the COVID-19 thing is still happening. North Carolina is easing restrictions as of Friday, May 8th. So fingers crossed we'll be back to business. I'd like to say June. We'll see what happens. We'll just play it by ear. As always, folks, stay tuned to our social media. We will give you all the details as they become available. And the minute we have an announcement to make, we will definitely hit you with that. Check out our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and, of course, highvelocitywrestling.com. That's all I got for you, fans. We'll see you around next time. And remember to please check out our social media at every opportunity. We'll see you next time on the official High Velocity Wrestling Podcast.